All right, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here this morning and to have an opportunity to present at this cotton and coffee presentation. I try to catch most of these as well, and I've really enjoyed the information presented on this, with this cotton and coffee and the kind of leisure approach that's taken here. So appreciate the opportunity. As Grant mentioned, I'm going to focus primarily today on planting seed quality. This has been a major emphasis within Cotton Incorporated since about 2020. We've had a very large project ongoing with the extension cotton specialist, and along with some other scientists across the cotton belt, trying to identify some characteristics associated with planting seed quality in order to better predict stand establishment. A big portion of that was also a Beltwide survey, which I'll touch on here in a little bit. And I just want to acknowledge the people here. They're part of the Extension Cotton Specialist Group, along with Lori Unruh-Snyder at NC State that's doing some visual mechanical damage work that I'll show you in a little bit. So seed quality, as you guys all know, this is where it starts. You got to get that stand to begin with and hopefully get it off to a really good start. As you know, every seed counts. Seed has obviously become a higher percentage of your input cost. So we need to, get as much of that seed up and going in a healthy manner as we possibly can. And as you know, inadequate seed quality can lead to poor stands, reduced input efficiency, and overall lower profitability. Something that I've learned kind of through this process, because I wasn't really versed in a lot of the seed quality aspects, at least in great detail. But I've learned a lot that over the past 2 or 3 years that seed quality is much more complex than we really want to think it is. And then also research on planting seed has been really minimal since about the 1960s and 70s. So we really needed to revisit this topic in many ways. We know that we've had advancements in ginning, we've had advancements in machinery, we've had advancements in seed technology, all these things, but we hadn't really revisited the basics of seed quality research. So kind of the goal of this Extension Cotton Specialist project, which started in 2020, was to determine the quality of cotton seed being planted and sold throughout the cotton belt. It tells in a little bit. And then the overarching goal of this, and ultimately, is to identify seed quality characteristics that lead to better stand establishment. So we know what to target, what to look for, and to increase the transparency of these characteristics throughout the entire seed industry. So this is a really old study that was done in the late 1960s, looking at, the early 90s in the seed quality, and looking at the impact of seed quality and how that equates to stand establishment, and also that directly correlated to increased yields in 3 out of the 4 years, which those are the 2 graphics here on the left side here, stand establishment, and then yield that equated from that higher yields equating from that better quality seed. And then I put the graphic here on the right just to kind of show, really that seed is just a condensed version of a plant. And once it starts to germinate, basically it's just unfolding. So we got to kind of think of how complex our plants are, and basically it's condensed down into that single seed. So there's lots of things that can go wrong that can impact that stand establishment, along with some of the cultural practices we do as well. So kind of focusing on the Beltwide seed quality project that the cotton specialist led from 2020 and then again in 2021, kind of a survey. The cotton specialists were in charge of kind of the field performance portion of that and collecting that seed from growers across the cotton belt. And the total number of seeds that were collected, samples that were collected, were over 400 over those 2 years, and over 68 different varieties from those 2 years. We had basically nearly 30 site years from all those locations. And then that same seed that the Extension Cotton Specialist looked at in the field, we sent that exact same seed for oil and protein, seed index, seed density, ran fatty acid profiles, cool and warm germination. And then we obtained some additional information from the companies. And then looking at many other things as well that we can to try to determine what could be contributing to seed quality, which would equate to, good stand establishment. So a lot of emphasis here. These were over 40,000 data points in the end. Not all the data is summarized yet. We're continuing to work on the data analysis, but all that field research is completed for this specific project. And moving into, this is just a portion of the data from that Extension Cotton Specialist project. And kind of the take-home message here is, you can see as that cool germination moves to your left, basically the warm germination goes down too. So you can nearly guarantee that if you have good cool germination, you're also going to have very good warm germination. As that cool germination becomes more variable, it could be paired with a good warm germ, or it could also be paired with a low warm germ. So this just kind of reinforces the importance of some of the tests that we do. We do know that the cool germination test is highly variable. And that's one of the things we're trying to identify, something we could maybe combine with cool and warm germination test to take out some of that variability. So you guys could have a better understanding of the seed quality characteristics and how they could equate to stand establishment. But basically, if you have cottonseed with good cool germ, you can guarantee it's going to have good warm germ as well. And similar to one of the earlier slides that I presented on some of the historical data, this just basically shows the stand establishment at 7 days after planting compared to yield. So basically, the quicker that cotton came up, the higher the yield potential was within that. There was one exception in West Texas, but all the other ones, even though some of the slopes aren't all that steep, still the faster that seed came out of the ground and the quicker it established, that generally equated to the higher yield potential. And then as we continue to dive into the data analysis, again, Marilla Maeda at Lubbock, Texas is leading this effort. These are some preliminary results that he presented at the Beltwide Cotton Conference, identifying some of the key characteristics here in the blue box that shows some of the key oil characteristics, protein and oil, and how that's correlated with stand establishment at 7 and 10 days, and then some of this equating also to obviously yield as well. So again, some of the preliminary results, and these were kind of where we're going to focus in on some of the current research that was going on in 2022. Now, kind of transitioning into another area of seed quality is visual mechanical damage. You guys have all seen when you open up those bags of seed that there's, cracked seed and there's some misformed seed and other things. That research was done back in the 1960s and early 70s and really has not been revisited since then. So we were fortunate to start working with Lori Unruh Snyder at NC State. And she basically has brought a lot of visibility back to this topic. Because again, we know that our gens are running faster and our seed size are smaller, and there's other characteristics that could be associated with visual mechanical damage as well. So these are some of the pictures that Lori took on the right, and basically she was going through and categorizing these as normal seed, pinhole seed, damaged, or very damaged seed. And kind of the cool thing she did, and these are some on the left here, are the categories very damaged, damaged, and pinhole. And then basically she germinated those in a germination chamber and then followed what that resulted in from that. So you can see this damaged seed up here. Basically it molded and never germinated at all. Here's an example of some of the damaged seed. Had some root issues there. And then pinhole, you can see probably the sulfuric acid burn on the cotyledons there, which may be cosmetic, but again, it's just kind of a characteristic of that. And then basically Lori broke this out into different categories. So what's the fate of this damaged seed? And damaged seed within a given bag of seed could range anywhere from, I guess, 2 to 3% all the way up to probably 15 or 18%. So that could be a substantial portion, of the seed that you're buying actually has some level of visual mechanical damage. But here on the left side, this is what Lori categorized as pinhole. And you can see of the pinhole damage, about 20% of that, actually turned into a strong seedling. And then over 50% of those that even had the pinholes were considered weak. So the radical was 4 to 8 centimeters and or had some other issues. And then about 13% of those were actually dead seed. If we go up to the damage category on the upper right, you can see the number of dead seed increased dramatically, the amount of strong seed dropped, and the amount of weak seedlings stayed about the same. And then as you get down to the very damaged seed, nearly 50% of those are actually dead seed and will, never even tries to germinate. And you can see weak, and then a small portion actually is normal. So those were kind of, again, a very high overview of the 20 and 21 work that was done. And the survey results, I forgot to mention that we did find of the results from 20 and 21, still seed that was being sold, about 5 to 10% of it was, I would categorize as marginal seed. So there's still a lot more effort that needs to go on for that. That allowed us to identify some of the challenges out there with seed quality. And then we're progressing now to a seed quality project 2.0, where we're kind of honing in on some varieties that we know have substantial variability and trying to use that variability to identify characteristics and better understand stand establishment under field conditions. So this is being led by Dr. Camphand at the University of Georgia. And we'll have some of these results will be presented at Beltwide this next year. I would like to acknowledge the cooperation and communication with the seed companies. They have contributed seed to these projects. They've been in communication, provided information, some of the company information to us that will help us identify key characteristics that we need to be focusing on. And for this Seed Quality 2.0 project, they've also helped us identify the variability within some of the seed lots that will help us get to hopefully the root of the challenge in the poor quality seed. And then, of course, the cooperating universities within this project, again, about 15 different universities, extension cotton specialists participating. So with that, I'll take questions at the very end after Dr. Jaconis presents, but now I'm going to turn it over to Evie. It's all yours, Evie.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. Morgan. Great presentation, and it's neat to see so many scientists working together on the planting seed quality project. All right, can you all see my slides here?
Looks great.
Yep, looks good.
Awesome. So as they mentioned, I'm Evie Jaconis. I'm one of the directors of Ag and Environmental Research for Cotton Incorporated. And one of my program areas is cottonseed, especially how it relates to human health and nutrition. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So one of the questions that I get sometimes is why focus on cottonseed? And I think Gaylon laid it out pretty well, but we know that it's very important to look at planting seed. But beyond that, one of the reasons we look at it is for sustainability. A lot of people are very interested in sustainability, especially our consumers. And when we think about cotton, we're already growing the crop for the lint, putting all those inputs in. So it's not requiring additional inputs to grow that cotton seed. And we have market opportunities for it. We're also stewards of our crop. So as that, I think it's really important that we know as much as we can about cotton. And lastly, as we learn more and invest in research, there are different findings that we might come up with. So like what I'm going to share today about human health and nutrition, sometimes it can be positive, and that brings out new opportunities. So what do we know about cottonseed oil and health? Let me grab my pointer here. Hopefully you all can see that. To put all this into perspective, on the right here is a figure of burden of disease by cause. This is for the United States in 2019. And you'll see at the top is cardiovascular disease as a top burden of disease. And if we look at the same figure for the whole world, you'll also see that that's at the top. So cardiovascular disease is something really important. And as I've quoted here, there's a lot of evidence in the scientific literature that unhealthy diet is a significant risk factor for cardiovascular diseases. So something we really need to think about in terms of disease and what we're eating. This information is from the USDA Food Data Central. If you haven't looked at it before, it's a neat database that shows different nutritional data for things that we eat. So here what I've pulled up is the oil information for cottonseed. It's labeled as salad or cooking. And we can see the energy content, what it looks like in terms of lipids, and we can break it down into fatty acids, looking at saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats. And what I want to highlight here is the saturated content at 3.52. So then we get recommendations from different groups. This I've highlighted is the American Heart Association, and they have a suggestion when you're looking at healthy cooking oils, we want to think about saturated fat content. And what they say is, in general, choose oils with less than 4 grams of saturated fat per tablespoon and no partially hydrogenated oils or trans fats. And so we can see that cottonseed oil at that 3.52 grams of saturated fatty acids per tablespoon could fit into that category. I do want to mention that cottonseed oil can kind of range. This is a general good number, but there's just natural variation sometimes. So furthermore, the American Heart Association also has a discharge packet for patients diagnosed with heart failure. And here they're helping you decide what to look at for grocery store purchases. And when we look at fats and oils, which they also mention using in small amounts, the food choices they say are unsaturated, non-tropical vegetable oils such as canola, olive, corn, highlighting cottonseed as well, and then some other oils there. There's also a really good resource called Dietary Guidelines for Americans. This is available to the public as well, but it's actually a really important tool for health professionals, policymakers, and other professionals in the health and nutrition world, especially here in the US. They'll use it for recommendations and guidelines. And the whole goal of this is that it's designed to help people make food and beverage choices through all life stages that are both enjoyable and affordable, and really emphasizing promoting health and helping prevent chronic disease. And so with that, the dietary guidelines focus on meeting food group needs with nutrient-dense foods and beverages while staying within recommended calorie limits. And oils are an important consideration for that because they do provide essential fatty acids. So within the dietary guidelines, they have different figures like this where you can see what a typical choice might be and what a nutrient-dense choice might be. And so here we can see vegetable oils as a nutrient-dense option, and cottonseed oil can fit into that. So all of this to say, cottonseed oil may have a fit in nutritious food choices, and we need to do more research in this area to understand more about it. So Cotton Incorporated's been working with scientists at the University of Georgia the last several years, and we've got some really exciting findings that I'll tell you about today. And really, we're just trying to build that body of knowledge around cottonseed oil and understand what its nutritional profile is, what that personality is, and what makes cottonseed oil special. So I want to highlight, this is a recent publication from the scientists at the University of Georgia. This work is led by Dr. Jamie Cooper. She often works in parallel with Dr. Chad Payton, and they did a project comparing blood lipid responses to diets that are enriched with cottonseed oil as compared to olive oil in adults with high cholesterol. And I'll share some of those results, but I want to emphasize how important it is that we get this research published. When it's published, other scientists are looking at it, making sure it's strong information. And in this paper, it has a conclusion statement that I've quoted here. And it basically says that diets enriched with cottonseed oil, but not olive oil, caused improvements in fasting and post-meal blood lipids and glycemia in adults with high cholesterol. So diving into that research a little bit, I want to thank Dr. Cooper for sharing some of these slides with me that I'll walk through with you. So the first study that she did was focused on cottonseed oil, and again, comparing to olive oil. And what we can see here is that the cottonseed oil reduced the total cholesterol, the low density lipoproteins, and triglycerides. But it also increased the high density lipoproteins, which are generally considered the good cholesterol. And at the same time, there weren't any significant changes in the cholesterol profile with the olive oil diet. So this was really exciting, really interesting, but this study was carried out in young adult healthy men. So the next step was to see, okay, what happens if we are ingesting cottonseed oil as adults with high cholesterol? So that brings us to the current study. So they did an 8-week diet enrichment, and with cottonseed oil versus olive oil, looking at cholesterol profiles in adults with high cholesterol. And the first aim was to look at fasting blood lipid markers, and the second aim was to look at post-meal lipid markers. So here you can kind of see what the study design looks like. The volunteers will first come in for a screening visit. If they're moving forward, they'll either go forward with the cottonseed oil or the olive oil enrichment diet. They'll have some pre, mid, and post visits. And at those different visits, they'll take measurements like blood draws, body measurements, as well as things like questionnaires. So in these kinds of diet interventions, the participants were provided with about 60% of their calorie needs by the research kitchen, and they didn't have other food restrictions. So I want to emphasize there's no goal to lose weight or anything like that. They're trying to maintain, and everybody's given food based on their estimated calorie expenditure. And everyone got the same foods, but the difference is that oil being cottonseed or olive oil. So here's an example test visit. We have our participant, her name is Jane. She comes in, has some of those fasting measures, blood lipids tested. She might get a high saturated fatty acid meal challenge, which comes as a shake. Then they'll do kind of intermittent measurements as well as post measurements. And then after all that, they get to head home. So here are some of the results. This is preliminary findings, and this is focused on the fasting blood lipids. And so what we can see here, this first graph is the total cholesterol measures. And you can see that between the pre, mid, and post visit for cottonseed oil, we do see this stair step downward. Whereas we didn't see any significant difference in measure with the olive oil. So when we look at what happened with the cottonseed oil as compared to the olive oil, we did see total cholesterol going down with the cottonseed oil. When we look at the low density lipoproteins, again, similarly, we see this stair step going downward with the cottonseed oil, lowering that low density lipoproteins, a lot to say, but we didn't see that with the olive oil. But when we look at the statistics, kind of comparing the cottonseed oil and the olive oil there wasn't actually much different effect there. So we see similar results with the low density lipoproteins, which was significantly reduced in cottonseed oil after the pre-visit, but we didn't see differences in those two groups. Taken together, cottonseed oil and olive oil enrichment in the diets have similar effects on these fasting low density lipoproteins, but we can say that the cottonseed oil was able to decrease the total cholesterol a bit more than the olive oil. So another fun chart like this, here we're looking at those high density lipoproteins, and we did see that it increases modestly in both the cottonseed oil and the olive oil groups, and the changes were not significantly different between the two groups. When we look at the triglycerides, there was no significant difference within each group or between the two groups. So taken together, these data show that fasting, high density lipoproteins, and triglyceride responses to both olive oil and cottonseed oil enriched diets are comparable. So our preliminary analysis suggests that cottonseed oil diet enrichment has a similar effect on fasting blood lipids compared to olive oil diet enrichment, but it may have a slightly more favorable effect on total cholesterol. It's also really interesting to look at things like sensory responses. We want to make sure people are enjoying their food. That includes things like appearance, taste, flavor, texture, just overall acceptability. And when the scientists looked at this, they didn't see a difference in those measures between the cottonseed oil and olive oil groups. So that was interesting. And the last figure I'll show you today is looking at the ghrelin. It's called the hunger hormone often because this hormone increases the drive to eat. And in their preliminary results, they were able to show a significant suppression of ghrelin with that cottonseed oil diet. So here, Dr. Cooper and the team just want to acknowledge the National Cottonseed Products Association and Cotton Incorporated for support for this work. And I guess lastly, I just want to say I'm really excited about this research. We've gotten some really interesting results so far. We're at a stage now where we want to broaden and diversify the body of cottonseed oil research. So we are starting to work with some new scientists. We are going to continue the research at the University of Georgia focused on human and animal models of blood lipids and lipid metabolism, like I shared today. But we've also begun new human health research with Dr. Mary Miles. She's from Montana State University, and she's working on a dose response study to understand the impacts of cottonseed oil on inflammation in the body. This work is really relevant to potential incorporation of cottonseed oil in the diet for things like reduction of inflammatory diseases, which includes like cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. We're also starting to work with Dr. Penny Chris Atherton. She is from Penn State University, and she's doing a literature review trying to bring together what do we know about cottonseed oil and human health at this stage, and also doing a diet modeling exercise. So I mentioned the Dietary Guidelines of America. She's looking at, how much could we include cottonseed oil in a healthy diet that's consistent with those dietary guidelines. So with that, Dr. Morgan and I thank you for listening, and I think we're happy to take any questions from here.